Hey, this is Gina Grad.
Hi, this is Teresa Strasser.
Hi, everyone. This is Mike Errico.
Hey there. This is Casey Cavalier.
I'm Rocky Rose.
And you are listening to The Jay Franzi Show.
Lucky you.
Welcome to The Jay Franzi Show. A behind-the-curtain look at the entertainment industry with insights you can't pay for and stories you've never heard. Now, here's your host, Jay Franzi.
Well, hello, and welcome to the show. I am Jay Franzi, and this is your backstage pass to the music industry. This week, we get to talk with a recording artist. We get to talk with John McEuen. He's a solo artist as well as a founding member of the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. We'll talk to him about the impact that a young paperboy had on his career, what it was like growing up with Steve Martin, and we'll discuss his latest book, The Life I've Picked. Now, John, he's a great musician, a storyteller, and just an all-around great guy, and I can't wait to talk with him tonight. So if you would like to join in, comment, or fire off any questions, please head over to jfranzi.com. Now, let's get started. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Can you tell me about the impact that a young paperboy had on you?
In 1967, when I was starting the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band with a bunch of other guys, I saw this Newsman, and he was a crippled guy. He had cerebral palsy, and he's driving a motor scooter. Then he'd get off and he'd go in the restaurant, and he would sell newspapers up and down Sunset Boulevard in the restaurants, in the record stores, in the record companies, the agencies, the lawyer offices. He'd get into all of them. And it was like, hey, Steve's here. Marty, you want a paper? Yeah, send them in. You know, it would be like he became a ritual in Hollywood. And I was starting with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. And I saw him in that first week we were on the road. We were heading to Boston. It was 5:30 in the morning. And I was going, oh man, this is really tough. This is a hard job. 5:30, we're not going to get there until whatever, you know. Right. And I saw this guy and I went, wait a minute, that's a hard job. 5:30 in the morning, he's driving uphill on Sunset Boulevard at about 8 miles an hour. And I saw him the next couple weeks. I got home and I saw him several times selling newspapers at different parts of Sunset, but he'd always come through Ben Frank's restaurant, and that guy, it made it hard for me to complain about having a hard job.
Of course, right?
In the banjo, you know.
The reason I bring up that story is because that story, it kicks off your album, The Newsman.
Yes.
And that album, to me, is the way that music used to be with storytelling and so forth in it. So can you tell me how the idea, the concept for that album came about?
I loved, ever since before I started playing music, you got trouble, my friends, right here in River City. Why, sure, I'm a billiard player, certainly mighty proud to say, I'm always mighty proud to say it. I love the way the rhythm of that went. And I started playing music and I got the Mountain Whippoorwill. I did it on stage for 30 years with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. Up in the mountains, it's lonesome all the time. This poem about the fiddle contest, which I have also put out with a children's book.
Nice.
In conjunction with my album.
That's very cool artwork, too.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you think so. Thank you. It's got the various fiddle players and
love it.
Forward by Steve Martin.
Yeah.
He and I used to do the Whippoorwill together a few times. Back when we were, I was 19.
He was a friend of yours
20,
in high school.
Yeah, and taught him how to play the banjo, but he said, I want to do this story, but listen, can you let me play banjo behind it. And he couldn't play the banjo and do the story.
My, how times have changed.
It was the first standing ovation I remember.
Oh,
we
wow.
were playing a little concert at a college. I don't know how we got the job, and I don't know why we got the job. We're only 20 years old, and we could do something. I guess that's why they hired us. But we did the whippoorwill, and I played the banjo, and it ended. There was about 300 people there, and it was absolutely silent. And I looked at Steve. I go, "Did we bomb? What happened?" And then the place just exploded, and everybody stood up clapping, and it was like,
how'd that feel?
It felt great. I wanted more. I wanted a lot more. I wanted to do that again. You know, it was wonderful. And when Steve and I worked in the magic shop, that's what got me into being in front of people, wanting to be.
That was in high school as well, right?
Senior year of high school, and then the next couple college years in Southern California, working in the Disneyland, Anaheim Disneyland.
Right.
The place where I had been my freshman, sophomore, and junior years. Actually just freshman and sophomore. I successfully climbed the fence to get in 14 times. I got caught the 15th.
It has to come to an end.
Yeah, it came to an end. But then I got a job there.
What was it like growing up down there?
Well, I thought it was okay. And of course, I was in Garden Grove, which is like a homogenized part of LA, Orange County. And I was working in Disneyland. Oh boy. Yeah, but I love Disneyland.
Yeah.
So did Steve. And he worked there from 11 years old, selling guidebooks and then popcorn and then stock boy and stuff. And anyway, I met him at 16. I was doing magic. It was really fun.
I met him once in Nashville. I got to work with him at a show that he did in Nashville. I mean, he's a very talented man as well.
Oh, yeah. He keeps me going more than he realizes. We used to have little contests about who was doing what better when and all that. Bill managed Steve, my brother Bill. And he managed him, and he made his movie deals, made 4 albums with him, and worked with him for about 15, 16 years.
Well, that's a good point, too. You mentioned his albums. I mean, he's known for being a comedian above everything else. And your music, if we go back to the Newsman, your music has an element of humor in it as well. For example, the opening song, Fly Trouble. Can you tell me how you incorporate humor, and did it go back to those days?
I think humor is funny.
Oh, of course.
I think
You're going to be my new favorite. I know that for sure.
But one thing, when I started playing music, I'm not much of I can't sing, okay? I sing like, I can deliver a funny song, but I found out that the talking stuff worked better. I remember the first song I learned, I learned to play the guitar. I'm 17 years old, and it was like, every time I come to town, the boys keep kicking my dog around. Makes no difference if he is a hound. They got to quit kicking my dog around. And people liked it. And it was weird because I didn't write it. I got it out of a folk song book. I just learned it, and gee, I'm doing something that they're actually listening and they like it. So I started finding those stories.
So when you're doing this, do you think of that in advance? I mean, are you trying to make the songs humorous? I appreciate the stories and the humor.
The stories, the talking records, Arlo Guthrie, Alice's Restaurant, Devil Went Down to Georgia, Fly Trouble, Hank Sr., King Tut, they've been around. They just haven't been one around for 15, 20 years. And anyway, I don't, as far as Nashville, I never paid attention much to trying to work with the Nashville mold, or whatever people were doing, which is obvious, but that's how you have a career sometimes. On this album, on the Newsman album, David Hoffner, he played on keyboards on Cremation of Sam McGee, and he really put in the electric piano licks right where they needed to be, and his bass thing. He's really good.
Let's talk about that for a session. Or for a second. You go in the studio. What type of recording session do you have? Because traditionally, bluegrass music is played all at one time. When country music, they get the foundation of a band to go in and play at one time, but then they do a series of overdubs. So what was the recording process like for your record?
Each cut was different. Some of the cuts, I played all the music, like Killed at the Ford. That's all me doing bass guitar, mandola, mandolin kind of thing. And Slide Trouble, I just played acoustic guitar and lap slide.
Yep.
And that's a bunch of Nashville players. They were really hot, really good session players, Joe Osborne on bass and some other great people.
So where was it recorded?
That was recorded in Nashville.
Do you remember the studio?
Woodland.
Okay, so it was over in East Nashville.
Yeah, it's not there anymore. It got burned down or something.
Did it really? I didn't know that.
At least that's what I've heard, somebody said. That's where we recorded the Circle Be Unbroken album.
Okay.
Old Rivers. You've listened to the album, I take it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Old Rivers. Really no big secret. It's just did it there. Did it in about 3-4 hours last October.
Very cool.
I loved Old Rivers, man. I listen to that thing now and it's like, it takes me back to a place I've never been, because I didn't know any old men that plowed fields, but I really relate to that song, because one of these days I'm going to climb that mountain, walk up there among the clouds. It just sounds so good, where the cotton's high and the corn is growing and there ain't no fields to plow. No fields to plow. Yeah, and it was fun doing Old Rivers. Well, doing all of it was fun.
It comes across that way, and the way you tell a story, even just now telling the story, you add personality to it, and it's different than the typical stories. Like I mentioned again, Nashville and country music it's built around story, but yours are truly built around stories, and they come across dramatic.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad it's not over dramatic.
No, not at all.
Because boy, I recorded a couple of these, and I listened back, and oh man, that's too far over the edge. Let's just quit being an actor and act better, or act it out, whatever,
Well, you mentioned that you have a very wide history of things, working in radio, television. You're an author, you're a writer, you're a concert promoter. I mean, you've done everything.
I don't see it that way. I see it like I've got to do something this month. Well, what will it be? I know. I could promote a concert, because the Dirt Band wasn't always working. I needed to make money to feed my 6 kids. I thank them for driving me to be something more than just a banjo player.
That's what I say every time I go to work. I always say it's because my wife likes to eat.
I can't say that. I better not say that. Yeah, I eat too much. Huh? What? Does this make me look fat? No, that doesn't make you look fat. Oh, so I look fat.
Right. It's a no-win situation. I'm very familiar with that story.
No.
So what was it like collaborating with the Oak Ridge Boys?
Oh, it was great. They were big fans of the Dirt Band back
Okay.
in the 70s. And when I called them to come to the studio to see if they'd want to do the session, they played on a couple of cuts. They played on Hey Joe and Sleepwalk. And anyway, I got to the studio around 8 o'clock or so for a 10 o'clock session. I was really nervous. This is the Oak Ridge Boys coming in. And although they looked up to us, I looked up to them.
I think we all have at some point.
But this is in the mid-70s, late 70s. And anyway, I get to the studio and there's a bus in the parking lot. And I go, oh, that's interesting. And I wonder when the Oak Ridge Boys are going to get here. At 9 o'clock, they came rumbling off that bus and
Right.
went in and washed up. And 9:30, they stuck their head in the studio and said, we're here. And they'd played a state fair in Indiana. And they just drove from Indiana down to the studio and parked the bus in the parking lot and waited. They stayed in their bunks and whatever, and then they're going to go home after the sessions. I couldn't pay them. They wouldn't let me pay them.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, they were so gracious. Yeah.
I had an opportunity. I have 3 daughters. I have a 14-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 2-year-old.
Oh, wow.
I am this old and I'm having a 2-year-old, yes. However, I took my 9-year-old and we went to see the Oak Ridge Boys a couple weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
It was really cool, and she got to go backstage and meet everybody. William Lee Golden, he's been on the show, and my daughter got to go backstage, and he was so nice to her, took pictures with her and everything. And then he looks down at her, he looks at her and says, look, I know you have no idea who I am and that you probably don't want to be here tonight, but it means a lot to me, and I appreciate the fact that you're here. And,
It sounds like William Lee.
and it just made her night. I mean, she just felt so special that night to be backstage, to have him talk to her like that. And then we got to go sit at front of house and watch the show, and she was just thrilled. For a 9-year-old to be able to do that, it was awesome. And he was just so, so nice to her.
That's great. Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about, too, I live in Kentucky, right on the border of Cincinnati. And we have a suspension bridge that was designed by John Roebling. And it was designed in 1866. And then in 1869, there was a bridge that he designed right afterwards. It was the Brooklyn Bridge, which you have a picture of yourself in front of the Brooklyn Bridge for an album called Roots Music Made in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about that album?
I was playing a club, the Iridium in New York City, which is a famous jazz club that Les Paul used to play every Monday night.
Oh, really?
And I was loading out midnight, and you had to go to the elevator, go up, and you were in another building. You weren't in the building. And the way it works in New York is sometimes you have to go up and come out their entrance. And I had a guitar, a banjo, mandolin, fiddle, and then the guitar of the guy that was playing with me, and he'd gone around to get the car and bring it around to the street. And the elevator came to the ground floor there. The security guard started hassling me. Hey, you can't hold that elevator up. I said, what? It's 1 a.m. There's nobody here. You never know. It's like, and this guy comes out of the elevator and sees this going on, sees me going, I'm sorry, but I'll have this stuff. I'm leapfrogging the stuff up to the front. And he jumps in and helps me. And he says, I'm surprised you didn't rip that security guard a new one or whatever. I said, look, he's just doing his job.
Right.
And his job and my job kind of clashed for a minute. And as long as I get out of his way, everything will be fine. And that guy says, what is your name? Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. Hey, I have a record company upstairs. Anyway, that was Norman Chesky. He owns Chesky Records. They make the best sounding records in the business. They use one microphone.
Really?
One microphone, a special stereo mic anyway, we talked. He says, "You want to do an album?" I said, "Sure." And he came to a show a couple days later. I was doing out in New Jersey and brought a guy with him, and I ended up doing a record with him a couple months later. And I called up David Bromberg and, "Hey, David, would you come play on a couple songs?" "Well, can I play on more?" "Yeah, sure."
Play on whatever you want.
Yeah, and so I've known Bromberg since 1970 when I met him at a club. He was backing up Jerry Jeff Walker, and they were playing to about 15 people.
There's a song on that record that I wanted to talk to you about, get some of the inspiration behind it. It's My Favorite Dream.
Oh,
It kind of has a old time feel, the way the drum has the brushes to it, and then has the background vocals. That it kind of just makes it feel like it's an older song.
yeah, great. Wanted to make it sound like it was cut by an old jazz band or something.
Right.
It was written by Felice Bryant, Felice and Boudleaux, his wife. I mean, it was written by Boudleaux Bryant. Felice was his wife.
Gotcha.
They wrote a lot of the Everly Brothers hits. They wrote Rocky Top. They wrote Love Hurts. They were one of the Nashville's best writing teams.
Sounds like it.
And this song came to me from Del Bryant, who's a friend of mine. He's their son. And he was running BMI. He ran BMI for 15 years. I met him in 1973 when he was a president of BMI.
The Performing Rights Organization.
Right. Thank you. And he said, "Hey, you're doing this album. Would you be interested in doing one of my dad's songs that nobody's recorded?" I went,
Yes.
"Let me think about it." Yes. and he sent it over, and I got Matt to sing it. And anyway, it was really neat.
So what was the recording process like for that? Was that one of the, one microphone songs?
Yes, they're all the Made in Brooklyn album is all one mic, all first takes, and it was the real recording, the way
things used to be.
people are supposed to make records. How long does it take to make a hit record? Oh, about 3 minutes. Not anymore. About 3 months is now what it is. But he records in an old church in Brooklyn. His brother, Norm's brother, David, is the engineer, and David and I produced the record and stuff. But John Carter Cash, Steve Martin, Andy Gessling, who was an incredible musician, Matt Kartsonis, Nancy Redbone. All these people came together. Some of the songs had 14 people on them. We rehearsed the music first before we went in to record it. And you'd go through the song, and the engineer would come out and go, "You need to move over there. You need to move in closer. You should move back a little bit. Okay, let's run it one more time." We'd run it again. And he goes, "Okay, almost good. Guitar, move in 2 feet." And that would be giving you the mix.
Right.
Of the instrument.
Mixing it live.
And it was like incredible. I didn't get it until we laid down the first song, and I went in and listened to it play back. And I thought, I can't tell if this is live or Memorex.
Right.
It sounded live. And the Made in Brooklyn album is one of my best accomplishments, I think, because when you have a stereo picture, right, left, and you mix things to be in that stereo thing. But they understand how frequencies work. You ever wonder why is it you can hear something fall behind you? You can hear a bird chirp up in the tree.
Right.
You could hear it chirp over there. You could hear a truck coming when it's coming from, there's an airplane. You hear an airplane. Why is it you don't hear at a record, you hear right to left? Well, they know how to make it they can make it almost like surround sound.
Right.
Because you can play this record back, made in Brooklyn, and the mandolin sounds like it's coming out over there. And my daughter, I send her a copy. She goes, "Dad, I wish you would have warned me. I didn't know. What'd you do? How'd you record this? I thought there was somebody behind me." You know, it scared me. I kept thinking there was somebody behind me coming in the house or something. Did that in 2 days.
2 days.
On the other hand, the Newsman album, I took 12 years.
So that's just what we want to say. You wanted to be able to experience both sides of it.
Yeah.
Well, you also mentioned, again, having Steve Martin play with you. What was it like growing up with Steve Martin?
It was fun. When I produced his album, he wasn't funny. It would be like, we rehearse the music and it's like, whoops. Okay, that went pretty good. Everybody okay? Okay, here we go again. 1, 2, 3. And he would do a 3-minute song. He would rehearse maybe 14 times in an hour. Just it'd be stopped. It's okay. It would just, he really works at it. He plays his music like it was a script.
Yeah, he told me that night, that music was his passion. That's really what he enjoyed doing most.
Mm-hmm. I believe that. Here he is being serious and stuff. I mean, just not being funny. And we're in the studio, and I'm in the studio control room, and I push the buttons and say, "Steve, you got to count this one off." He goes, "Oh, okay. Ready, everybody? 1, 2, 3, 4. No, Steve, wait a minute. Stop. You can't say the last number. You have to leave the last number silent because we're in the studio and echo and so. Oh, okay, I get it. Okay, everybody ready? Yeah, ready. Okay, here we go." And he goes, 1, 2, 4.
Yeah, not funny at all.
Yeah, and that just cracks everybody up, It was, thanks for the 2 minutes off, Steve, while everybody recovered.
Well, you play pretty much all the instruments, the stringed instruments anyway. How did that come about?
I started playing guitar. My brother was showing me how to play guitar. And at 17 years old, I learned things like Freight Train, that song. And it was quite a while before I could go. But I couldn't do anything that he couldn't do. And he showed me how to go. And I heard the Dillards one night when I was 17 and a half. And that really took me away, took me over to a different planet. And I met Rodney Dillard. Where does this music come from? How do you do this? I want to play the banjo. I don't have one. And he said, well, take the fifth string off your guitar, put a first string on there, and then put an HO railroad spike at the 5th fret, and you'll have a banjo. Get rid of the 6th string. You don't need it.
And it's just that easy.
I went home and did that, but I didn't know how to tune it, so I had to go see him again. How do I tune this thing, though?
Well, his band had a big impact on you as well, didn't it?
Yes, and I started watching them. I watched them an average of once or twice a week because they were playing in L.A., everywhere in L.A. They would play the Ice House for a week. They'd play the Troubadour for a week, and then the Golden Bear for a week, and maybe the Paradox for 2 weeks. And I was just hanging out, 17 and a half, 18 years old,
Right.
watching Doug Dillard like a hawk.
Is that when you knew that music was the way to go?
I just finished 3 years in the magic shop, and I knew I didn't want to work for a living. I wanted to do things, make things. Silly, didn't want to work for a living, so I got in a job where you have to travel 12 hours to play for an hour and then do another 12 hours
Right.
in the bus. But that's not work. That's part of the fun.
Sure.
So yeah, that was. I wanted to be an entertainer, a musician, a troubadour, live the dream.
11,000 shows later, here we are.
Yeah.
Did you ever think it was going to be 11,000 shows at that time?
I thought it would be 12.
Did you? Yeah, that makes more sense.
Then I'm not done yet,
That's true.
so
So
it might be.
we'll get to the
Although
12.
now I'm down to only about I think I did 85 or 90 shows last year. And then COVID, that was like maybe 20.
Yeah, how did COVID affect you? I mean, I know how it affected everybody, but the career. What were you doing during COVID?
I did 26 Facebook Lives
Okay.
that were an hour long. That took 2 days to prepare for because I like to make them fun, complicated,
Sure.
take people somewhere. And I worked somewhat on the Newsman album.
That was part of the 12 years.
Yeah, it was part of that. Yeah, that's funny.
How hard was it for you to adjust not being on the road?
It just kind of went by. Did what I could.
Yeah.
It was tough, but then it let up.
Let's take a second to talk about. You've written a couple books now. Let's talk about the life I've picked. The life I've picked. Look at you. You got it right there.
This is a book that is a story of my life, starting from being a kid and going through playing with Leon Russell and Roy Acuff and Steve Vai.
Oh, really?
Steve Vai and we did doing banjos once at a backyard benefit, and I said, Steve, would you play with me on this? It's doing banjo. I don't know it. I said, just repeat what I'm doing, only do it better.
The sad part is he's capable of doing it right there on the fly.
He won.
He won.
Yeah. Steve's a nice guy. He's a friend that.
Never had a chance to work with him, but he's one that I would like to. Super talented guy.
Yeah, he's got a room with 200 guitars in it. Jeez. Anyway, yeah, I tried to tell stories as truthful as I could, and
Is there anything in that book that you wouldn't have imagined that would end up in the book?
There's some things that didn't end up in the book, but
There you go. Let's talk about those.
but I think the two Japanese girls and the white girl just she didn't like Americans. She liked Japanese guys, and she was a blonde surfer type. But one was a hot rock and roll Japanese. Another was a kimono wearing
Conservative.
traditional, this is the way what she played.
Right.
As. And then there was the surfer girl, and the three of us went out on town one night. Me with these three. I think I'm turning red. And we went to discos and went to like 4 or 5 different places, and I had one on each arm, and the Japanese girl in the kimono was following 10 feet behind, and we go in and sit down, and she'd bring a drink, and it was just like I was a high roller. I was there producing an album on a guy, spending 10 days, and that was really fun. We just had a lot of fun. It was fun to try and tell a joke. I'd tell a joke to the girl, the surfer girl, and she'd translate it to Japanese, and then that one would say it in Japanese to this one, and then she'd say it back to the girl, and then she'd say it back to me. It'd come out totally wrong. And it was just funny.
You spent over 50 years with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. You got any stories from there? Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
What's one that you can share?
Well, Jeff was cantankerous, you might say, or he was a curmudgeon. And then again, so was I a lot of times. But sherbet. Do you like sherbet?
Sherbet, yes, sir.
You call it sherbet?
Yeah, sherbet. My dad, I would always eat ice cream. He'd eat sherbet, and yes.
Sherbet, you said.
Sherbet, yes.
E-R-T.
Yes. That's the way it was pronounced in Boston.
Yeah.
But they don't pronounce anything correctly, so.
In the world of Jeff, it's pronounced sherbet.
Sherbet, okay.
Spelled B-E-T.
Yeah.
So we're at the Driscoll Hotel in Austin one time. And I said, Jeff, you want to have lunch? He goes, yeah, sure. I said, well, I'll see you downstairs in a half hour. And he was, of course, 10 minutes late. He was always late. And so I had time to look at the menu. And I noticed on the back, it was spelled Sherbert. And then one page in, it was spelled Sherbet. So it had both of them on
right.
there. And I waited. Hey, Jeff, hey, figure out what you're going to have. Yeah, I'm going to have a club sandwich and then some sherbet. And I waited till he was looking at the menu at the page with it spelled Sherbet. So you might want to order sherbet because then you'll get what you want. Well, I'm going to order sherbet. And I said, I bet you $50 on that menu is spelled Sherbert. And he's looking at it spelled B-E-T, right? And he goes, you're on. And I said, okay, turn to the back page. And there it is, B-E-R-C.
Sherbet.
I said, you owe me $50. No, I don't. It's spelled wrong. I don't care if it's spelled wrong or right. It's spelled the way B-E-R-T. You said it wasn't $50. Hey, I'm going to get a dictionary. He goes and gets a dictionary from the front desk. It's spelled B-E-R-T in the dictionary. It's a collegiate dictionary. It's a collegiate dictionary. That doesn't count.
That counts more.
Look, if we have the guy bring out the container from the back, when he brings out the container, it's spelled B-E-R-T. And he's not going to pay. So thankfully, this happened in the late 70s. 20 years go by. The internet comes along, right? Whatever, 90.
You're still looking for your $50.
And I put this story out, which is in the book. One of them is described in the book. I said, and he didn't pay the $50. He showed that he knew how to weasel out of a debt. And I define weasel, and put it anyway. And so I make a little internet thing out of that. And a few days later, Jeff's on the bus. He goes, take that story down. What? It's an absolute truth. You didn't want to pay, and you had to pay. But you want to pay. You're a weasel. And the next day, you get $50, and here's your money.
Here's your money. Now take the story down.
Yeah, I took it down. Only took 20 years to get the money.
Right, but you got it.
Yeah. So there's stories like that, and there's stories that aren't dirt band for sure, like the Japanese girls. Oh,
So what's next? How are you going to create your next story?
I don't know. I'm going to go out and see what's out there.
Well, as you look back now, like I mentioned earlier, I mean, you've accomplished so many things.
I appreciate you saying that, but I really feel like I haven't. But I've accomplished a few things. Yes.
Yeah, I would say a few. I mean, you've won all sorts of awards. You've played on, not just one or two albums. I mean, a lot of albums. 46, I believe, is what your website said. You have 7 solo albums. You've played 11,000 concerts to date. I mean, you got the ones coming up. You've had a career. So as you look back at that career, what do you hope people take away from it?
Me.
You take me away.
I mean, something that I've made. It'd be nice to think that the newsman is sitting in somebody's house, or they listen to some of the stories, or that some of these. Yeah, I got this recording once of a guy telling this story about the cremation of Sam McGee, and it was really neat. It had fire and wind and dogs, and along with his story, and and it made me want to be recording stuff. So maybe I would influence somebody.
Do you think like that? Do you think about legacy?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Trying to keep up with myself is hard. Right now, from that heart attack, I quit playing for 2.5 months, and I'm getting back into it, but I'm not there yet.
Did that put things into perspective?
I don't know about perspective, but it took care of a bunch of things. Like, so what? Do what you want. I'm just glad to be here.
Right.
Yeah. I have some things that. Yeah, I don't know. It's like.
All right, sir. Well, we do this thing here we call Unsung Heroes, where we take a moment to shine the light on somebody who's worked behind the scenes or somebody who may have supported you along the way. Do you have anybody you'd like to shine a little light on?
Well, the Newsman is one guy. Rodney Dillard's another guy. Rodney Dillard has been very influential in my life. Steve Martin has been a constant inspiration to me. Even in high school, he was always working on something. In college, he was always working on his bits. He was insecure, a comedian. He was like, what am I going to do for myself? Oh, I can't do that. I ought to do this. Where's that other page? He's just constantly scrambling.
Constantly working on his craft.
I don't know if he thought of it that way or not, but yes, he was. Steve is known to collect art. He's known to be a good art buyer. He can buy a Picasso for $1 million and sell it for $3 million in 3 months, kind of thing, He emailed me last year, look what I found on eBay. I figured it was going to be some kind of painting or an old banjo. It was a very excited email leading into this picture of the sign that was on the magic shop in Fantasyland, Merlin's Magic Shop. And he bought it. And he has it up in his house somewhere. And he was just so happy to get that. I said, oh, man. It's like real humanizing, of him. And ever since his daughter came along, he's become a nicer person.
Was he not a nice person at the beginning?
No, a nicer person.
Nicer. Okay.
He was nice, but he didn't have a good family situation. Went to his house 3 different times when we were growing up, and his mother said one thing to me. or to us, "Would you boys like some cookies?" "Well, sure, Mrs. Martin, thank you." She brought in a plate of cookies. That was it, you know. And his father, never congratulatory or anything. I'm standing at the premiere of The Jerk, which my brother produced.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Well, he produced several Steve Martin movies, as well as managed them. I'm standing between Carl Reiner and Steve's father, Mr. Martin. And somebody comes up to Carl Reiner, because he was the director, and he says, "Hey, Carl, congratulations," at the end of the screening of the movie, which was in Westwood in Hollywood. It was a big deal. It was a big screening. It was a big, "You must be really proud of a good job." "Yeah, thanks a lot." "This is Steve's father, Mr. Martin." "Oh, Mr. Martin, you must be really proud of your son." And Mr. Martin says, "Well, he ain't no chaplain." Oh.
It's rough.
Oh, okay. Well, he ain't no chaplain. It's just like, that's the way he was.
It's going to make it hard to grow up like that.
He was jealous. They never talked.
Well, I guess we should also thank your wife, right? I mean, she's saving your life and all.
Well, if I was thanking somebody, I should have started with her. But yes, I thank my wife expressly, because it was her quick thinking and her good decisions that did save my life.
A big thanks to John for taking the time to share his stories with us. And thank you for taking the time to hang with me here. I really do appreciate it. If you know anyone that would enjoy this episode, please be sure to pass it along. You can do that and find the links to everything mentioned over at jfranzi.com/episode 85. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to The Jay Franzi Show. Make sure you visit us at jfranzi.com. Follow, connect, and say hello. This episode has been brought to you by VR Knives, your source for 100% custom knives made by a true rock star. So, if you're in the market for a new piece of art, reach out to VR Knives. 407-421-5528. 407-421-5528.